Hi.
Hello,
Hello, hello.
Cool. Okay, welcome to the Cackle. This is Entry Point's weekly interview series highlighting small businesses, startups, and people that are making an impact on their communities. Today, we are talking about the importance of civic and corporate responsibility. And joining us is Rich Chang, everyone's favorite. He's the CEO and co-founder of NewFoundry. And real quick, before I say anything about your background, do you think that probably 95% of the people that are watching this think that you are best friends with them?
I hope so. I would be super honored if they all think I'm a best friend. So it'd be
seriously, we were like, we do this. This is like guerrilla warfare type, getting people to watch. Is that we'll like email people that you used to work with or that might be interested in it to be like, hey, you know, if you want to share this, and everyone's like, Rich Chang, I love Rich Chang. Yes, we'd love to share it. Oh, I'm best friends with him. I just thought it was like so funny. Like I was like, man, people really like Rich so much.
short list, wasn't it though? It was only like 3 people that you reached out to because you're like, oh no, who'd Rich work with?
Yeah, exactly. I reached out to like your family members and they're all like, yeah, I guess.
Oh my God. Well, I love everyone that's watching. Thank you very much. I greatly appreciate
it. Cool. So, little way of background is that, so you run a tech company, and you also are on a legit so many boards. So I'm going to just read for everyone all of these boards that you've either been on or on currently. So he's on the Ann Arbor Transportation Authority, which is really cool. Like I feel like getting it more like Ann Arbor, getting more like bike friendly and commuter friendly. The Michigan League for Public Policy, the Ann Arbor Hands-On Museum, the best. And the United Way of Washtenaw County, the Ann Arbor Ypsi Regional Chamber, which you did that pipeline summit that was so awesome. Michigan Works Southeast. There's so many. Oh, and Intermittent, we cannot forget. You're on the board of Intermittent, which is a conference that just happened it's probably like a month ago now.
Yeah. 2 or 3 weeks ago. Yeah.
But it's so awesome. Heidi Kron.
Yes.
Love it. And yeah, Shamar Heron, who just got announced to be executive director.
Yes.
Bam. I saw that on Facebook this morning. But he's the executive director of the Michigan Works Southeast. He said, Rich is an awesome dude. He is my board member as well. I love it. Okay, so exciting. So sort of civic corporate responsibility. I feel like you're like a business leader you have like a reputation as a tech business leader, and like that's kind of like your job, but you also manage to like make time to do all of these like local initiatives in your community. So what are some of the top reasons that you as a business owner prioritize being such an active member of your community?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it really boils down to 2 things, right? So one is for me personally, I do it for learning and also for making an impact on the community, right? Like I feel it's actually a duty, not something that I just go, oh, you know, I just kind of want to do something nice. It's really a big duty for me to give back to a community that really has helped me directly and indirectly. And then I'll expand a bit further. But then the other part is for NewFoundry. In the end, it actually makes good business sense, right? From a workforce pipeline aspect all the way through to business development, because not only do we get our name out there, which is great, but we're also helping to build our community and also help our business grow. For each of those different boards you listed off, the reason why I belong to all of them is one, apparently I just can't do things kind of sequential one at a time. I just figured, let's just join all these different organizations, try and get them to be able to utilize each other, right? Because each of them have different strengths, whether it's transportation, policy, workforce, business, community issues, children and older adults. So if we just take, for instance, the AAATA, the ride, transportation is a big problem for our workforce, right? And Ann Arbor, Ypsilanti, they're not really any different from other areas. And in fact, actually, we have a little more limitation, and COVID has actually brought that more to light, right? And we have a lot of folks that live in Ypsilanti that don't have cars that need to get to Ann Arbor area to get to jobs or do whatever they need, even just grocery shopping. So I felt it was really important for me to learn about those as a business owner so that when I hire folks, I can actually be a lot more aware. And then maybe there's change that I can do on there. With Michigan Works Southeast, that is actually a pretty core reason why I did get involved with a lot of these organizations. And again, this plays the NewFoundry side of a workforce pipeline. A lot of folks just think about Washtenaw County and they immediately just go to just Ann Arbor. There's a lot of real estate that involves Washtenaw County.
Yeah, exactly.
And a lot of these surrounding communities, they are not getting, in my view, the opportunities to, one, get the education, which then gets them the skills that they can actually be employable. And this is what I call like the hidden talent pool, right? It's pretty much anyone that doesn't graduate from University of Michigan, which is where a lot of businesses, including us, are guilty of that. Yeah, and me too, right? Very early on, most of our hiring focus was around convincing University of Michigan graduates to stay in the area, which, as we all know, University of Michigan, amazing school, love it to death, but a lot of the graduates don't stay in this area. And then as I started looking farther down the road, I was like, man, 5-10 years from now, am I going to have enough people for me to hire to continue to grow NewFoundry, right? Because when you first start off, like a handful of people, but we're now up to about 15, and we still need to hire more engineers. And I'm trying to battle with the coasts, especially Silicon Valley, of trying to retain talent, when a lot of times folks just primarily focus on the salary aspect. Mm-hmm. Consider the whole compensation package and also the cost of living, that kind of piece, right? So for me, I said, well, I can continue to try and fight that really steep uphill battle, or I can try and say, hey, how about we build our community up even better from there, right? Because in the end, we all, especially now, more recently, realize that there's a lot of equity issues, equality issues that we have to kind of figure out, because in the end, we all do better when we all do better, right? There's a famous quote by Senator Paul Wellstone. And in the end, it's about trying to figure out how do we get everyone to climb the economic ladder. And so me as a business owner, I sit there and go, well, I should probably get involved in this, because a lot of the times what happens is on a lot of these boards, you have the seats comprised of people that are typically community organizations, right? So other nonprofits in the area that they just kind of try to coordinate with each other. And then on the business side, it turns out to be more folks that were in business, but a lot of times are retired. And so they have their experience that's great, but a lot of times it's not real time. It's like, what are the issues that are happening now? And I said, well, this is a great time for me to try and get that voice. And actually a lot of this came out of discussions I had with other business owners, such as like Sean Duvall from Golem Mazine was a big getting involved in these boards. And New was actually, they're a really great org, right? They're a nonprofit that works with nonprofits, and they were actually one of the first boards that I ever joined, and it was a great experience, and I learned a lot, and that's what kind of gave me a taste for how I can actually have an impact on there.
Yeah, I feel like New has so many, like everyone's like, oh yeah, this person's so awesome. Oh, well, they used to work at New.
Yeah.
And what does New stand for?
You just stand for, I think, non-enterprise work. You think I remember after this question time?
I know. I was like, what does New stand for? Research it right now. The magic of the internet.
No, I love it. Well, while you're searching for that, the other reason why I really got involved in this was when I started looking into the whole workforce pipeline piece, was learning about the economic disparities, right? So Washtenaw County, it's a terrible statistic, but we're like the 8th most segregated area in the nation, right? And then that's when I started peeling back the layers and looking at more. And I came across a report called the Alice Report. It's put on by United Way, and they have reports for specific reasons, right? And it's an acronym that stands for asset limited, income constrained, employed, right? Because a lot of times people just say, hey, if we put butts in seats, then our work is done, success, and we're good to go. But in reality, that's only just like a small sliver. A lot of it really has to do with how do we actually get people above the cost of living. And I just had some statistics from 2017, but in 2017, just from Michigan alone, 43% of households struggle to basically afford the basic necessities, right? And what they say is they're basically one flat tire away from complete disaster, right? Because you get a flat tire, you really can't afford to get it repaired, and it's just this snowball effect. And that's just in Michigan terms in 2017, that was 1.66 million households. If we look at Washtenaw County, it's a total of 39%. So that's 25% ALIS and then 12% poverty. That's not good. And in 2020, that number is actually a lot higher. It's a number that just continues to climb, right? So that's something that I really am focused on trying to solve, which is why we had things like the Workforce Pipeline Summit. And then we had a lot of big plans with the Chamber and other organizations such as Michigan Works for 2020 to continue that conversation of moving us towards solutions. But of course, COVID hit. And so we had to backtrack, but now we're actually getting that ball rolling again.
It's interesting because I think Washtenaw County is a lot like a lot of different regions where I think like we like kind of all, or the white people in Washtenaw County all kind of feel like this is such a diverse area and pretty inclusive and all of those things. And then when you kind of like dig like past the very top layer, people are like, no, it's not at all. Like it's like predominantly white, predominantly, like if you look at Ann Arbor specifically, the cost of living is super high. Like it's pretty homogeneous. So like, I feel like that's something that's people don't totally realize about a lot of these regions where like issues like you're talking about are so important because there is like, no, it's just like kind of this shiny surface layer of being diverse, but not truly.
Yeah, I mean, I think step one is being more aware, and it's really heartening to see that there's a lot of initiatives to make folks a lot more aware, and now, especially within the last couple of months, a lot of action to try and resolve a lot of these problems, because in the end, right, an economy is an ecosystem, and it's not just giving people opportunity to buy goods or services even, right? I mean, there's the ability for them to actually be contributing members to society from real estate, right? Either it's buying houses or renting a place, paying taxes, right? And then big picture, like being able to donate to social causes, because we put such a strain on our social organizations that have to try and help out folks that are underserved, underprivileged, right? Well, let's try and shrink that pool of people that need that help. And in the end, we all come out ahead.
Yeah.
So we have to think a little bit more of just one, getting people trained and skilled, getting them into seats of where companies can actually utilize them, right? Because there's, to me, kind of back up, I look at workforce pipeline as two components. There's the historical workforce development, and then there's a workforce deployment. And most of us seem to focus more on the development piece, which is like the policymakers and education piece of creating that skilled workforce. But the deployment is where I think that's actually a large portion is the business owners like me have to shoulder that responsibility. Because one, we have to work with the policymakers and the educators to say like, here is where I need skills to be now. Here's where I need skills to be 5 years from now, and also be at the table, having the conversations, communicating and participating. And then on top of that, also hiring these folks in the end, right? It's the worst thing to just,
exactly.
Hey, let's get you skills and then not turn around and hire them, right? And making sure that we also step even farther back and make that actually a good environment for these folks to actually learn, right? Because you can't just take people that are underserved, underprivileged, and just put them in a seat in a classroom and say like, okay, here you go, now start learning.
Yeah.
When they're sitting there and 50% of their mental capacity is spent going, okay, as soon as I leave this classroom, I have to figure out how to put food on the table for my kids later on today, or I have to figure out how to even get home from here and not have it be an hour bus ride, right? And so if that's something that we as business owners can go, okay, maybe we need to also chat with our employees and figure out what kind of challenges are they having outside of the workplace that we can actually make it a lot more conducive for them.
Yeah, exactly. We have a couple million comments that I've just ignored. So Christy Smith said, Rich is a great example of the importance of tech supporting the community, which I so agree. Yulia says, very true. Boards need to be replaced with diverse, coherent teams or cohesive current team. I do feel like that's so true. Like the number of boards that I see that have like no women, no people of color on them, no people from like different socioeconomic status background on them is like crazy. And you see it's like, that's the BS test, I think, is every time on LinkedIn, someone's posting one of these like, yeah, kinds of things. I like click through to people and their organization. Do you ever do that? Like, I would just be like, oh yeah, where do they work? Oh yeah, people. Oh, right. Okay. You have actually nobody at your organization.
Oh yeah, if you look at their about page. There's some companies that go, you probably should just pull that picture down because
yes,
not a good look, right?
Yeah, exactly. You're scrolling through being like, it's 100% white men.
Yeah, and other thing too is that the research has shown. So I know McKinsey, and there's one other, Peterson Institute of International Economics. They have done studies and reports that show that diverse companies, they actually increase their profits, right? And it's diverse with starting just with the management team. They show impact there. I think it's like sometimes 21 to 33% increase in profit margin, and that's around gender, culture, and ethnic diversity, right? And so there's a lot of components, and those are easy fixes. And I know a lot of times conversations will folks will be like, well, I keep trying to hire diverse individuals that come in here and I can't do it. And so they kind of just throw up their hands and say like, well, I kind of did my point. It's like, okay, well, let's take a step back and go, how do we fix this, right?
I love when people say that.
Yeah, and that's was what for me drives a lot of what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
Is that, okay, well, I don't have the folks that I want to hire to create an equitable and workforce or equal workforce. So what do I need to do? And that's where I said, okay, I need to get into those areas and start giving those educational opportunities and workforce opportunities, places for them to look forward to, right?
Yeah, that is interesting. And then let's see if there's other things I missed people saying. Then let's see. Helping us reach more meaningful community. I can't keep up with all these. Okay. I like how Shamara's just like, make it plain, Richard. Just telling it like it is. Christy Smith said, check out Yan Azzaro's work at Depot and Catherine, which is in Washtenaw County.
Oh, yeah.
Report stats by zip code in our county that Rich mentioned. That's interesting.
Yeah, and the other part too is as business owners and even community members, we just really need to look at how do we make ourselves resilient, right? I mean, there's so much focus, especially in the funding community, you know, where there's angel or VCs in particular, where they're all trying to go for the next unicorn. Remember, like unicorns are called that because they're a unique bunch. It's a very small, like numbers game for that. Whereas if we focus on building a lot more resilient companies, you know, they can actually be able to navigate issues such as when COVID hits, right? And this is again the first time we're going to run into some massive issue like this. They can be self-sufficient, they can weather the times, they can actually adapt to the situation. And that's something that we all need to really focus on, especially moving forward. And a lot of different orgs that I'm on, such as Michigan Works, the Chamber, and pretty much United Way, all of them, that's something that we're having conversations around, right? Is, okay, how do we learn from this? And how do we make sure that when we get out of this COVID situation, we can actually handle something even better for the future? Like we learn something and go on. And that's something that, frankly, I mean, my path to this has not been easy. I think a lot of folks look at me now like, oh my gosh, like Rich is on all these boards. And like, well, there's a lot of components to that, right? One, I have a wonderful team at NewFoundry. I have two awesome partners that allow me to do a lot of this because they deal with a lot of the day-to-day. And then I have an awesome team of designers, engineers, strategists that also step up and do their work in an amazing way, right? Yeah. So for me, it's around making sure that, you know, actually I just kind of lost my train of thought. I love these live ones sometimes.
Well, I did have one question, like along the lines of what you were saying, so like, I feel like a lot of times, and I was just talking to a friend of mine, Adrian Omer, if you know him, he works at Kresge now, but we were just kind of talking about how like it's kind of hard sometimes to step out as a business leader and kind of speak your mind in a lot of the topics. And I think it's business leaders are predominantly white men. And if you kind of step out and like make a statement that is like along the lines of a lot of the stuff you're saying, they might just kind of like ostracize you from the community. So I feel like how do you navigate being both a business leader who needs to have this like sort of slightly polished persona, blah, 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 and speak for the things that you believe in at the same time?
I like how it's slightly polished because it's very true, isn't that?
Slightly polished. I mean, like I'm no one to speak about as polished business persona.
Yeah, I mean, I feel lucky and fortunate because Ann Arbor I think embraces always trying to improve, right? And it's a good thing, and it's also sometimes a frustration for me because there are aspects of just looking at Ann Arbor itself that we could do things a little better, and it sometimes is a battle to get those introduced. Part of it is attracting businesses to the town. We have some basic challenges such as just available office space that we have to figure out how to solve to be able to accomplish that. For me personally, it's kind of just how you frame things. Like for me, I'm always around just trying to have discussions with folks, just more as an approach of data gathering. I always just don't try to really have a first goal of trying to change minds or change views or change policy. It's just more of, here's the information, let's talk, let's have a dialogue, let's try and come up with some kind of action forward that we can from this. Plus a lot of stuff that I'm working on, if we just look at it, say, from a politics standpoint, it's pretty nonpartisan. I just want people to get jobs and be able to work and be able to afford to live. Yeah. And anyone that wants to try to politicize that, that's their prerogative, but I'm not going to play that game. So a lot of times, what I just say is this is
why everyone likes Rich Chang. I like that. You're like, I'm not going to play that game. Yeah, that is cool. Do you feel like it's more important now for business leaders to be more active members of their communities and taking on civic challenges, or do you think it's kind of just as important now as any other time?
Well, I think it was more important. It's always been more important. I think now we have hopefully more doors opening. And that's more of people actually being willing to open the doors, actually step out to be more involved, right? Instead of just being more focused on their business, which very early stage companies, that's really important. But that's also why I at the very beginning, I said, hey, this is something that I do for me personally, but also it does benefit our company. And that's been something that I've had to use to try and convince some fellow business owners that, I respect their opinions and their views and their actions to get them more involved in boards. And it's not even just you have to be part of a board to accomplish this. Just being involved in these organizations, even at a committee level or come to events, or even just evangelizing information that they have in their heads about how to make this a better community. And we have to be willing to at least start small instead of just saying like, well, I feel like if I do X, Y, and Z, it's only going to benefit, say, the Washtenaw County area and nothing really at a national level. It's fine, right? Let's focus on local and build our way from there. Yeah. That's something that I've even said to various folks when they asked me about those different initiatives I had. I said, look, my focus is Washtenaw County at this point. If maybe it starts to trickle out and it can affect even maybe like Southeast Michigan, awesome, but that's not a focus for me. Let's fix stuff here and see where it goes.
Yeah, and I think, we have a lot of viewers from Ohio and Chicago as well, and I think that that it's kind of like applicable to a lot of different areas, or in Detroit, where people are kind of trying to like fix their local community, and if everyone is kind of doing that, then it's making a big difference overall. So you kind of touched on this earlier, but according to research we've done, only 20% of business owners in Washtenaw County are people of color. What is one thing you think business leaders can do to build a more inclusive and diverse business community in Washtenaw County?
Yeah, so to build on what I started with before, I actually kind of view that, I need to ask for one, but I would probably say there's three things, but they all relate together. Like one, right, is what I said around building resilient company. So let's build camels, not unicorns. And that is backed by the data around being diverse, right? If we can actually build diversity into how we hire, how we work, how we actually approach running our businesses, one, the numbers show that you as a business, you're gonna make more money. Two, we actually then to accomplish that, you have to really think bigger picture about how do you actually pull in your community into your business, right? And that's from hiring practices of when you start doing, for instance, like a job posting. How do you approach your job posting where you're not already automatically removing people from that pool, right? Because you're saying things like, oh, I want a bachelor degree for, say, like an entry-level job, to things like giving people an idea as to what they can hope for. And so there's one initiative they have is around job postings where it's the typical stuff, right? You have the job requirements, the needs, the desired skills. But one section I love for us to start adding in or thinking about adding in is career ladder, right? Like what are the potential paths that you can take to other jobs? Because then when you start at entry level, you go, oh, I actually have a potential path to moving into these other roles. And then on top of that, that actually forces us as companies to think about that, right? Because it's the worst thing when you go to an interview and you go, well, where can I eventually maybe move up to? Because we as business owners, a lot of times we flip it, right? We're like, well, where do you want to be in 5 years? But if we haven't even thought about what positions they could potentially have in 5 years, that's not really a fair question to ask. And so if we're already thinking about that when we do the job posting, we're already ahead of the game. And then I think it actually kind of balances things out as to, one, our expectations from a business owner or leader, and then two, expectations from the person that's potentially going to join the team and work for you. The other part, to answer that question, so there's three. The two is for us locally, recognizing or remembering that Washtenaw County is the 8th most segregated county in the nation. That's really bad. I mean, it's depressingly bad, and I don't think a lot of people really think about it. They just hear the figure and they go, oh, okay, and they just kind of carry on with their day. And that's the worst thing we can do because there's 7 people behind us and we could easily take over those spots, right? And being at the bottom is just sucky anyways, right? I hate losing, and we're losing that game. And that's thinking about the different types of segregation, whether it's income, educational, and occupational. And the third is just understanding that a lot of the reason why we're in the position that we're in is because of systemic racism. And there's economic components that have played into that, from how we've done things with housing, from redlining institutions that have been around for a long time that are just kind of have different words nowadays, to how we actually do our hiring practices, again, of what targets or what communities do we actually target, how do we actually target them, like putting our job postings all online. There's a lot of communities that have very smart, brilliant people, but they don't have computers. So you can do other things like put the job postings at churches or community centers or other ways, but we have to make the effort to do that, right? And that plays again to the conversation we had earlier of like, how do we find and attract this talent? We have to meet them, and we have to do the parts on our side to actually make it easy for those folks to know about the jobs.
Yeah, I think people are starting to see a little bit of that, like even the computers thing that you noticed with like online schooling and just like all of the challenges that the school system is facing and that parents are facing, and trying to even just do that. Because I think a lot of people are kind of like, oh yeah, they can just go online on school, and they're like, well, I don't have the internet. And and like you notice that in a lot of different like communities where you're like, even like internet access is not a given for a lot of households. And so it's just like, I think that it becomes abundantly clear when you kind of are moving in different communities and doing sort of like wider spread community work.
That's the part that the critical thinking that I think we all can learn to do better at, right? It's because even in Ann Arbor public schools, there are a lot of students that don't have access to computers, let alone laptops or internet connections at home. A lot of people just assume, oh, these students go to Ann Arbor public schools, they must be fine, right? Well, no, school of choice, there's a lot of students that come from impoverished areas that are going to enter public schools, they don't have those resources. And then moving to this whole online thing just puts them further, farther behind the 8 ball. But this is something that I've only really started to learn. Like a lot of the stuff is probably within the last 4 to 5 years. And it's been an evolving learning process for me of always saying, okay, I got some piece of information. Let me take a step back and peel back the layers and figure out what is the actual root cause. And a lot of that maybe probably comes from past jobs, because I was given an opportunity at Arbor Networks to step into a QA manager, a quality assurance role. I really didn't know much about quality assurance. And from there, I started to learn about how do you evaluate risk? And then from there, how do you actually determine like what the root cause is for a particular bug or some issue? And then I could take those and actually apply it to life experiences. And actually now this reminds me of what I was trying to get at before. Like my pathway to here has been with a lot of ups and downs, right? I mean, a lot of people probably don't know this, but I dropped out of school after my sophomore year of college, right? And worked in the industry for the degree I was working on, which was ship design, and discovered I really like the degree, right, or the field, more because I didn't feel like there's a lot of job opportunity, and also frankly I just wasn't very good at it. And it's more because I just
I was wondering, I saw on your LinkedIn and I was like, wait, marine engineering, and I'm like, what?
yeah.
And I had to like look up the one school that you went to because I was like, wait, what is this? I'm so confused.
That was actually a good lesson for me because my parents were not happy, dropping out of school basically, right? But then I transferred to University of Michigan, and as I look back, if I hadn't taken those steps or had those things happen in my life, like you and I would be chatting here, and I wouldn't be able to do the kind of work that I'm doing. And I think the messaging that I'm just trying to get across to folks is there's a lot of ups and downs, and it's a big ball of yarn right in the middle of that path, right? We just got to navigate through it and not expect that everything is going to happen the way we want it to. I've been extremely fortunate and lucky and privileged, and I'll be the first to admit that, to have the outcomes happen for me, right? Because there's a lot of people that they don't get that opportunity to climb out of setbacks. And that's also what drives a lot of what I do, though, because I want to try and increase that chance of doing that, which is why, for instance, this summer, Michigan Works, they've had a program that they did in conjunction with University of Michigan. It used to be like summer 19, summer 18, summer 17, that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then this year, University of Michigan did a large lion's share of that, and it's now just called SummerWorks. And this year, I got to mentor 2 amazing students. One that's still in Ann Arbor Public Schools high school, she's going to be a junior, and another one that just graduated. And it was neat because I got to explain all the experiences I've had, including the downs. I mean, I've had companies that have failed, but they're all learning experiences. And the great thing is when they said, oh, well, this is really cool, because their assumption was just everything has just been great for me from day one all of that. It's like, oh.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's part of it, is we're not an Instagram society. Not everything is.
That's when the invention of Instagram and all that stuff does make it look like all nice.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting. I started out in public accounting, and it was like the new worst day every day. People were like, so you intentionally went into accounting, eh? I had my partner one time tell me that she was like, you'd make a really great partner. You make a terrible associate. And I was like, oh, I got to get out of here. Luckily, 2008 happened, and then I was
like, well, I guess it's being made for me.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, just kidding. Yeah. No job. But then I started working at Spark.
And thank goodness for that, right?
I like it.
Yes.
Okay. Well, you kind of talked about some of the challenges that you faced as a founder. Is there sort of, if you want to elaborate a little bit more, talking through like the evolution of NewFoundry and how one quick question, it's 11:05. Do you have a hard stop?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, otherwise, closed computer.
I'm out.
If you want to sort of talk through the evolution of NewFoundry and how you've sort of successfully navigated various challenges along the way. And I feel like seems to me, based on a lot of the things you've said, that you have like a very learning mindset. And so maybe that's how, but if you want to elaborate a little bit more on like what challenges you faced and how you've kind of made those navigations, that might be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, the learning, that's a key word. And that's something that, again, I'm very fortunate and lucky, especially with the partners and team that we have. Because we as a company, I mean, we've had a lot of failures, even from day one. I mean, we've made a lot of mistakes, whether it's from hiring to some of the business deals we've got into, especially around like pricing, but you just move on and learn from there. I mean, there's been some projects that, man, we didn't really make much of a profit on that because we just completely underpriced it. But that was also because we were so concerned about our reputation that we didn't want to just deliver something that didn't meet just because we were over budget, right? And some of our initial hires, they're amazing folks, but we eventually did have to let someone go because they weren't able to grow with us as a company.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an awesome article out there that I recommend everyone download. It's a free PDF. It's put on by, or it was written by the Harvard Business Review, and it's the 5 stages of small business growth. And it's something that I came across in year 3 of our company, and I wish I had read it or known about it day 1, because it actually maps out all the ups and downs that you typically go into experience in each of those different 5 stages, and especially the first 2 years. And one of them in particular is around hiring. It flat out says, folks that you probably bring in the very beginning are probably not going to be with your company once you hit potentially stage 2 to stage 3 of your growth trajectory. Right?
Yeah.
And our company, in regards to learning, it's always around evolution. And for us, the key driving words, I guess, that would describe NewFoundry is diversity, evolution, and in the end, learning, because we want to make sure that we're diverse, not just only with our team and our staff, but also our client base, the industries that we serve, and then also how we approach doing our solutions. Like, we're not just a one tech solution shop, but just like we only use one particular language. It's always trying to figure out the best solution for the client, what the client's looking for. And then also evolving our business development. We are very fortunate that in the end, we're primarily a services company. So companies hire us to do work for them. So it makes it very easy for us to do this. Whereas, say, if we're a product company focused on one particular product, it's a little hard to be able to get that diversity of just like, okay, we have a lot of different income streams because, well, you're trying to build a product and get that out to market. In the end, though, we have to force ourselves every year. And it's not that we're forcing ourselves because we're putting up a lot of resistance. It's just you have to be aware and be ready to make continual changes, whether it's on the operational side. For us, I had to do like 3 years ago of stepping back and realizing, do we hire more people now? And if so, why are we hiring them? And at that time is because we thought we needed more people to handle the additional work. But as we took a step back, we realized, oh, well, we're actually wasting a lot of time on our build process. So let's get full automation going for our deployments, our builds, for whether it's for staging or for production standpoint. And then from there, we realized, oh, we actually don't have to hire as many people because now we're actually being more efficient with how we're actually doing things on the within the office area. And then on the business development, that's evolved. Like, we used to do a lot of small business engagements, which we still do with certain areas, especially like just like basic websites, that kind of thing. And it's now evolved into, we're doing a lot of very technical work, right? And we're working with large corporations, large brands, and it's things like proof of concept work or demonstration of capabilities or technology, all the way through to high impact stuff, which I personally love the most, where, for example, we're doing a lot of work with Michigan Medicine. And I love that because we're actually affecting patient outcomes, right? And patient experiences within the healthcare industry, which, as we all know, it's pretty tough to have people like actually be happy, but we've been having some great success there. And that's stuff that like warms my heart because we're actually having true impact.
Yeah, that is awesome. I like that. You're like, we're saving lives.
Yeah, but just, I mean, people just realize like our growth is like this. But there's been dips, right? But as long as the average it continues up, we should be happy with that.
So it seems, this is kind of a random question, but it seems like you have a lot on your plate. And then, so like, how do you calm your mental state with all of that? Like, you've got like a million boards, a million things you're working on, like you run a company, like you've got a great team and all of that, but like, what sorts of things do you do for like self-care to be like lame?
Oh, I love it. Well, I've got amazing friends all over the place, which is great. I got an amazing wife, Tanya, who um, is just that I think is a big grounding piece for me. I mean, she's in the education field. She's just finishing her PhD in education actually now, but she's actually taught me a lot around what I've like a lot of these thoughts have been in my head for a while. And like I said, it's only been probably the last 4 or 5 years that it's really kind of clicked where I started moving my way forward. And I just kind of bit off little bits and bits of time to try and pick up information and move forward. And then the other is just you got to have hobbies outside of this, right? But the board work for me is kind of like my I don't know, like I just like doing it because I feel like I'm doing something for the community. Beyond just waking up, going to work, doing stuff that I love with NewFoundry, but also I'm doing stuff outside of it. So
yeah, that's good. So it's kind of like the board stuff is like a good way to kind of like refocus what you're doing to change the planet and all of that. Yeah, I like that. Okay, we'll just wrap this up with one last question.
Okay.
What is one thing that you feel most proud of professionally or personally since the start of 2020?
My goodness, it kind of depends on what part of 2020. I got like
like January and February.
Yeah, I know. Personally, I'm just most proud of just the folks I've been able to surround myself with, like for instance, you, Tanya, all my amazing friends, being able to participate in all these different initiatives with the different boards, like they've been accepting to have me be on there. Professionally, it's like I said, my awesome partners in the team. And actually, we've also been able to grow like our company in different ways, such as we do have 2 products that we launched in 2020. One is called Kestrel Medical, and that came out of a lot of the work that we're doing for University of Michigan. And it's basically just a HIPAA compliant medtech application cloud platform, right? That makes it very easy to build applications.
You said right, like I know what those words were.
Yeah, no worries.
Right, and I'm like,
yeah. But I mean, that's the part, right? Is we actually were able to take stuff that we did and turn it into a product, and then we have a Brightsmith, which is a product configurator platform, right? And so those 2 are professional stuff.
Yeah, that's
awesome. So we've been wanting to launch some products for a while, and we got to do it in 2020.
Yeah, that's so great. I love it. Cool. Okay, well, thank you for joining, and I feel like I'm so like inspired by you. I'm like, community.
I love it. Well, I appreciate you putting me on here, and I appreciate all the folks that actually stayed and joined to listen and watch. And anyone's always willing to reach out to me if they want. I can talk more about this and everything.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, cool. I will talk to you more soon, and thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks. Bye, everyone.